Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to What a Piece of Junk episode number 86. We're the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your agreeable host, Scott Botman, and joining me is the guy that keeps the drunken Gungan spaceship in one piece, Mr. Derek Marsh. Derek, how's it going out there, bud?
It is going like I'm sitting on the desert planet of Tatooine. Not Dantooine, because that's a bit of, isn't that like a swamp or a forest?
It's a little jungly, yeah. It's
Yeah,
different.
so that would feel great right now, because right now it is across the United States. Feels like a barren wasteland.
It feels like we have two suns. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm
Yes.
sweating to death just standing outside here in the Queen City in Charlotte.
And
North
you should
Carolina.
know, because you have two sons.
I do have two sons, and let me tell you, it gets hot. Anyway, speaking of keeping it hot, we've got also my original Wookiee co-pilot, our very own Dave Phil Cloney, man of 1,000 nicknames, Mr. Miracle, the Gooey Chewy, Nathan Miracle. Hi, Nathan.
Hello, hello.
But this episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi was so momentous that we can't discuss it with any sort of justification with just the three of us. So
We have to balance it. We have to
balance it out. So we have a fourth person on the spaceship for this show, and that is Fandom Podcast Network celebrity, Mr. Darth Smooth, Lee Fillingsness from Blood of Kings podcast. Lee, how's it going?
I am thrilled. I finally got to see something I've been wanting to see since the prequels came out, so I'm pretty happy. Don't let him fool you. I actually reached out to Scott and said, I need to be on this podcast. Well, and I actually canceled an appointment so I could be here for it.
When you have a very insistent, essentially modern-day Viking that tells you, I need to be on your show, the response you give is, what time can you be here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're doing. And we're actually recording tonight's episode a lot sooner than we normally do. This weekend, of course, is Father's Day. So we're recording this on Wednesday, June the 15th. I myself have only watched this episode of Obi-Wan. First of all, I've only watched it one time, which I hardly ever do for the podcast prep. And secondly, I just finished it about 2 hours ago. So, you know, yeah, it's a rapid turnaround.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it was quite the episode. So we're not going to waste time by mincing words and, you know, getting caught up with each other, because that's not what y'all are here for. You're here to listen to us talk about Star Wars, and specifically Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 5. Nathan, we pretty much have the concrete proof of your theory that each one of these is a reflection of episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because this had a whole lot of Empire Strikes Back going on. Before we jump into the 5 questions, let's dive down into this theory for just a few minutes here. Nathan, what did you see that cemented this theory for you about Part 5?
Well, in Part 5 specifically, it's almost like they took The Empire Strikes Back and just condensed it and took out the Luke's training piece.
Well, maybe. See, I have something to say about that part, but go on.
Ooh. So we have Jabin, and that's basically our stand-in for Hoth. And we've got the Way, which is basically the stand-in for the Rebels. So the entire episode, they're trying to escape from this planet, and that very much parallels the escape from Hoth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then we also have a little bit of backstory on Reva, and that kind of mirrors Vader telling Luke, "No, I am your father." We get that shocking reveal of this is the origin story for the bad guy, and maybe they're not quite the villain we thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of parallels. There's way more parallels than just those, but I'm sure we will talk about those a little bit later. We do always ask the question, what parallels do we see to other Star Wars? And, well, there's a lot.
Yeah, so my thing about the whole, we didn't have any mentor and apprentice moments like we did in Empire Strikes Back. We kind of did when we saw Obi-Wan training Anakin. And it was clearly Master and Padawan. Obi-Wan even mentions to him that he's still just a Padawan. So there you have it, a mentor and an apprentice. Not exactly the same as Yoda and Luke on Dagobah, but certainly the same story beat, as it were, with someone learning from a mentor, Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the 5 questions. Derek, we'll start with you for question number 1, and that is, what was your favorite part about this episode?
Instead of Vader yelling no, mine is finally. Finally, we get an episode that I've been waiting for. As I talked about, I really enjoyed the first two episodes. I think episode two definitely afterwards left me wanting some more, and I don't feel like episode 3 and 4 really lived up to the expectation. Kind of was going hum ho with the storytelling and the character development, but this was finally what it was. So this from the beginning all the way to the end, for the most part, was a flawless episode. I've got a few things that we'll nitpick in question number 2 about it that will make it so it's not the best thing since sliced bread of the best episode ever, though some people might feel that it's the best thing that Star Wars has put out for an episode wise.
I've seen some talk on Twitter already today of people saying this is the best Star Wars TV I've ever seen. And, there's a lot more Star Wars TV to compare it to nowadays. So,
yeah. But are they also comparing it to the animation? And that's the thing that, there's still quite a few episodes. Let's be honest, the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars season 7 still puts this to shame. So,
yeah.
But they put a lot of things to shame.
It has. And then, but obviously, like I said, this probably, probably be in what I would say in the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian would probably be right up there with some of the top 5 episodes of the Mandalorian. So some good stuff there. Like I said, just really what I wanted overall with character development. We got a little bit of homage to Empire Strikes Back, but again, I know that's my favorite movie, but it's still just the way they did it, the way they developed Obi-Wan, the flashback. We finally got what we had talked about, right? So obviously we got some new actual, Clone Wars or prequel footage, essentially, right? It wasn't just a reverbage of the original films that they put into as a flashback. So that was great. I know Lee's chomping at the bits to talk about some of that stuff there. But just overall, I mean, like I said, it was just something finally, and I could say that I liked everything about it. If anything specifically, it'd probably be the flashback, as well as a little bit in regards to finally redeeming the third sister a little bit. I'm still disappointed a little bit in how they told her story. But it does make it a little bit better because for what she ended up turning into, it's made a little bit more sense in the way it's done. So credit where credit's due on that.
Cool. Well, I would just chime in that last episode we were discussing whether or not Leia would get kidnapped or captured again in this episode, and if she didn't, would it still feel like a Empire Strikes Back homage? And it still did, but we did not get any Leia capturing in this episode. So I thought we were gonna right at the end when Vader was ripping up or I guess almost at the end when Vader was ripping open the ship, but surprise, it's a decoy. So that was kind of cool.
And we got Obi-Wan Kenobi. He got captured. So you still got somebody captured.
Somebody did get captured. All right, Lee, I won't make you wait any longer. Let's have you go next. What was your favorite part about this episode?
Well, the boys already spoiled my thing. It really was the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan, which is technically pre-Clone Wars, because Anakin is using his Episode 2 hilt, which was damaged before the Clone Wars started, when he went to Geonosis. There is a minor difference, and I brought visual aids today.
Whoa!
If this will show up on my
We have lightsabers in the
this
show.
Is
we have
Episode 2, maybe. This is the Episode 2 hilt. Notice the emitter is very similar to Darth Vader's.
Yes.
As opposed to the Episode 3 through really 9 at this point hilt. We have just slight differences. And boy, this virtual background sucks. But anyway.
it's way too shiny. The virtual background is all like too shiny.
This is, coming from a martial artist and fight choreographer's standpoint, the best choreographed fight that we've gotten in live action Star Wars. It actually shows something that had not been able to be done by Nick Gillard, that hack, and that is make Obi-Wan look like he can fight. He looked horrible in all of the movies. The fact that 20 years later, Joe Eusebio, the fight choreographer for this, was able to get an older man to give a better fight with less budget.
Yeah.
I'd almost guarantee he has less of a budget than George was giving him.
For sure.
And every time, even when Obi was getting his butt kicked in episode 3, he's still fighting better than he ever did in any of the prequels. So seeing that, to me, was like, that's the lightsaber fight that I wanted to see in the prequels.
So,
And
Lee, specifically, what moves, what stances, or what have you, were they doing that made it seem so much better?
well, first, Ewan McGregor was not standing like he was about to receive a serve in tennis. And even if you watch the behind the scenes of episode 1, Nick Gillard, that hack, is talking about, we're taking moves from everywhere, even tennis. Straight up says it. And if you go back and watch the prequels and you see how Obi-Wan moves, when he's standing ready, he's kind of hunched over, ready, to receive service, because it's the only thing that he was taught to do. I don't blame Ewan McGregor for this. I think that the fights that we've seen in the last 5 episodes from him show that he can do this. And the fact that he's not a real action star. Nobody's really clamoring over any of the fights that he did in The Island or Jack the Giant Killer. Nobody's been like, wow, the fact that he was able to do this this many years later at that level was great. Now, the moves, Hayden Christensen always had good fundamentals. He moved very well when they actually had a cameraman who gave a crap about what a fight's supposed to look like. Prior to episode 8, I considered the last half of the Dooku fight in episode 3 to be the best choreography. As much as we can argue about episode 8, the complexity and the techniques in the throne room duel just blew me away. I thought those were great. But in this fight, Obi-Wan is not just twirling and pausing, which was his method. And even when they used moves similar to what he did them in a way that showed a warrior, somebody that was familiar with and comfortable with the weapon. There were moves that Anakin was doing that come from German longsword. There's stuff that Obi-Wan is doing that is coming from Aikido, Aikijujutsu, various Japanese martial arts, Kali, which is Jojo Eusebio's kind of base martial art. He puts a lot of that stuff in. Jojo Eusebio is also the fight choreographer for the John Wick movies, or one of them. So he is like
attention to detail.
Very good at getting that out. Yeah. And he was a fighter that became a fight choreographer, kind of like myself. So when you're just a fight choreographer, you start as an actor, and then you kind of put together things from an outside perspective as you would recognize them. And we see that a lot with, George Lucas's fights in the original trilogy as choreographed by Bob Anderson were good, but he actually slowed them down.
Yeah.
He made them weightier because he had a vision that he wanted to see. And he wanted to film them a certain way. And for dramatic impact, episode 5, hands down, the Bespin duel is the best dramatic impact. Followed kind of closely by Revenge of the Sith, the Mustafar duel. Neither one of them had very good technique. They weren't bad, but it's like, okay, these guys are supposed to be masters. There was a few moves in Bespin, but Nick Gillard, that hack, always just relies on twirls to make up for a lack of his ability to communicate how to move as an actor. And the only other notable thing that he did was Willow. And all of that fight choreography was twirls and run at Mad Mardigan so he can cut you.
Yeah.
So I am not...
Is he coming back for Willow the series, or do we got somebody else doing that?
I will beat wholesale booty if they hire him for anything ever again.
Okay.
Because he's a hack, as I may have mentioned. So
No, I don't know anything
Chuck
about this hack.
Wendig.
He's the Chuck Wendig of fight choreography. Ayo! Oh man, good times. Okay, well, great, Lee. I'm really happy that you were so excited about that fight scene. I liked it from a dramatic standpoint. Although my favorite part of the episode, Nathan, you're going to go last. Sorry. My favorite part of the episode was Vader fighting Reva. I love the Obi-Wan Anakin duel, of course, but Vader fighting Reva is a whole different exercise. It's not choreographed like a big fight because Vader's not concerned or surprised in the least that Reva attacks him. And he almost does, if you will, a dark side mirror of the way that Luke fights in The Last Jedi, in that he's not really fighting at all until right at the end there when he decides to, oh my gosh, the way he keeps using the Force to just sort of be all, you can't even touch me, to her is just awesome. And then at the end, he uses the Force to undo the spinniness of her spinny lightsaber, which I just thought was awesome. And then, of course, almost ends her by cutting her up there.
But I would have thought, Scott, you would have correlated it to Darth Vader doing what Obi-Wan did to him in the flashback, where he didn't use the lightsaber.
That's true too. Yeah, that's a different callback to the exact same episode.
Yeah, where we get where Darth Vader says, "Now I am the master." Right. That's the whole callback.
Yeah.
So, I would have made the connection to Episode 9 when Kylo Ren did that fighting Rey in the throne room before he ignited his lightsaber. He did the empty hand. And I got another connection to that, but we'll save it to connections.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but I really enjoyed watching Vader just demonstrate extreme mastery of the dark side of the Force, which we normally don't see much of that except in the form of Force lightning. That always seems to be like I'm super good at the dark side because I can do Force lightning. But this was a cool way to show that the dark side is a pathway to many abilities. And Vader was demonstrating them all really well. And it was fun to watch Moses fight against Hayden Christensen. Man, Hayden got to fight all kinds of ways in this episode. Okay, Nathan.
Is he real quick? Is he actually the one dressed in the Vader suit too?
Well, I'm sure at certain points it's a stunt guy, but
no. But most of the other stand-ins, it was him. I didn't.
My understanding is that there are 3 different people who played Vader. Hayden Christensen is only one of them, and whenever we see him, and whenever we see him, in the outfit, that's not Hayden.
Oh, I heard that he was wearing the suit for a lot of this.
That's not my understanding.
Maybe a lot is a strong term, but I heard that he was wearing the suit.
There would be, just from the fight choreographer perspective, that would be kind of a waste. And you may have noticed, I really liked the fight that Hayden did. Him not being a stunt person or really an action actor for the last 20 years, he would not have been able to repeatedly do that second fight in armor. I've had to do fights in costume like that, and it's hell, especially when you can't really see to the left or right. You have to be facing straight forward. Yeah. That is the time and place that you would want to put a skilled stunt person in with that ingrained skill set, understanding of safety, and muscle memory. I love him, but they're most likely a stuntman in that.
Yeah, but he is in the suit at some point. According to comicbook.com, an article that came out a couple weeks ago, it does say that he says being in the costume again was incredible. It's an amazing, iconic, and it's in part of the feeling when you put it on. Very emotional. There was a lot of physical prep, just trying to put on some size so that I could fill out the suit a little bit more. Most of the time on Obi-Wan was actually spent in preparation for it.
Yeah,
so
and I had heard
he does have some scenes in it that he is wearing the suit.
Certainly stunt guy in a lot of shots, though. Definitely.
Yes.
And I'm definitely going to give him props for putting on those shoulders, because he was kind of scrawny in all the other stuff. But, you look at him when he's kind of talking to Obi-Wan right before the big duel. Dude found an extra set of shoulders somewhere and decided to carry him around. So
yeah.
Props
and I know that.
Well, he grew into a man.
Yeah. I know that Ewan McGregor had mentioned that when he got ready to fight again, and this time he said something on one of the talk shows about Hayden's coming at him, but he's wearing the costume, and he's all like, "Holy crap, it's Darth Vader!" He was legit freaking out for a minute because he had never interacted with Hayden while Hayden was wearing the armor back in the day. So anyway, sorry. Okay.
So to actually answer the question,
yes, go, Nathan.
My favorite part of the show was also the fight between Darth Vader and Reva. But the reason that was my favorite part of the show is because we see that Anakin / Vader is still doing what he was doing in the flashbacks. Obi-Wan kept talking to him about how you're trying to prove yourself. You have this need for victory. And when he gets into the fight with Reva, he's like, you know what? No, I can't just beat her. I have to beat her in such a way that she knows she was wrong to ever oppose me.
Yeah.
I've got to not only beat her, but I'm going to be so
Humiliate her.
arrogant that I'm not even going to pull out my lightsaber. And when I do disarm her, I'm going to take half of her lightsaber and give her back the other half so that she can, feel like she has a chance.
Yeah.
But he's still proving himself. And in that respect, he's still the learner. He hasn't become the master because, as Obi-Wan said in the flashbacks, he'll never truly be a master until he can get over that arrogance and that need to prove himself.
Yeah. Good times. Okay. All right. Lee, I'll let you go first this time around. What was your least favorite part of Part 5 of Obi-Wan Kenobi?
There was a couple things, but the ship perspectives are just completely wrong. Like, you look at the ships, and it's actually been the last couple episodes. The shuttle that Tala takes them to Fortress Inquisitorius, and then again the drop ships. When you see them next to the troops, they're all way too small to be there. But that one kind of got me. But otherwise, pretty much a damn solid episode.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. The perspective is a little skewed, and I think this goes back to budget.
Oh, wait. I'll also say Obi-Wan and Bail Organa are crappy spies.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're saying names and locations specifically over a communication device that has saved data that can be recovered. And, here, hold on to this really important information, criminal that I met a couple days ago. And
You might as well be
It
handing it to
definitely
Jar
did
Jar.
not
Yes. Well, you know
I
what?
would rather hand it to Jar Jar.
Yeah, right.
At least Jar Jar would, destroy it
Master, I know. Yeah.
accidentally, but he'd destroy it.
I should have sent it to the Marx brothers.
You brought it here. Anyway, my answer, of course, to that is they're crappy spies because they're not Bothans.
Well, if they were Bothans, they'd be dead spies. Wait, no, not yet.
All right, Nathan, what was your least favorite part of the episode?
All right, so I do feel like some things happened out of convenience, not necessarily plot. And one of the big things for me was Leia has been obsessed with Lola, her droid,
Yeah.
up until this episode. And then for the first half of the episode, she never bothers to interact with Lola or question, hey, where did Lola go? Lola's the one that has the restraining bolt that's going up there and messing with the hyperdrive, which, spoiler, that's another parallel to Empire Strikes Back.
Wait, she messed with the hyperdrive? I thought she messed with the shield door.
Sorry, she did mess with the shield doors.
Okay.
The parallel, though, is, we pulled some engineering trick to make it to where you can't actually leave when you're supposed to.
Although their
Well,
hyperdrive
did the
is
hyperdrive.
messed up.
Yeah.
Their hyperdrive is messed up, yes. And possibly because of Lola. But why did Leia all of a sudden not care about Lola? Like, up until now, like, if Lola is out of her sight, she's like, I must find Lola. I also felt like some of Reva's backstory was kind of convenient. So Vader knew that she was a youngling and knew the whole time that she was trying to betray them. It seemed kind of out of character for him to pull this long con. So that kind of threw me out of it a little bit.
But not too out of character for Anakin to hold a grudge. See also.
Oh, definitely not.
Tusken Raiders.
I can't see the Tusken Raiders. They're dead.
Good,
Not just the
good thing
men.
he wasn't in sand when he saw her. So
That's it. Yes. Yes, a solid complaint about Lola and Leia. Although, as the father of someone who has been 10 years old and has a particular toy that they're all about, a couple weeks later they might not care about it one bit. So it happens. But yeah, in my opinion, though, the droids for Leia seem more like beloved pets than they do toys. So that probably is a little more of a solid connection, a bond there. So you're right. It was weird that for a while there she was all like, no, I don't care about my droid. Yeah. Derek, what was your least favorite part of this episode?
There's a little bit of little bits here and there. I will definitely not my final answer, but definitely agree with Lee that the graphics again just seem to be off, especially the ship there. The transport ship just looked completely fake. It didn't even look real when Vader was trying to pull it down, right, with the Force. But the biggest, which unfortunately doesn't make sense to me, that he could pull that down, but he couldn't pull down the Tantive 4 when it escapes in Rogue One later on. So that was a little bit of I'm not sure why they had him do that. But anyways, the big thing for me was the fight scene when they actually had the Imperials versus the wannabe Alliance rebels.
Mhm.
It was, I was expecting to be a little bit cooler, but it just got to be really dumb, where literally the stormtroopers are like 1 foot in front of each other and they're not hitting anything. And I'm sorry, I don't care how bad of a shot you are, you can literally be away from somebody with a foot with a laser beam and you're going to hit something. And it just looked really bad, considering there was like 50 Imperials and there's like 10 of the rebels, and I get they got a Jedi and Obi-Wan's deflecting stuff and all that, but at some point they're gonna hit something, and
They
some of
did
them
kill.
died. They
They
did,
killed
but
Revel. Yeah.
but like there was just a lot of bad action shots. That's all I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
it could have been a little bit better choreographed when it came to that.
Yeah, Lee.
I did want to comment on that because there is an interesting historical precedent for that. During the Napoleonic Wars, one of the things that they did with their conscripted armies was attack exactly like that. Because you got the guys in the front that'll shoot, and when they get hit, the next wave comes in, and psychologically to a defending force, seeing this unstoppable wall coming at you, it was something from a historical military perspective that really did work, even though it seems really stupid. And when you compare it to the British infantry square that was the same time, that was a much safer method, but it wasn't anywhere near as mobile and it wasn't anywhere near as intimidating.
Oh, I'm not worried about the stormtroopers, Lee. I get
Yeah.
that part. I just meant that nobody was hitting anybody when they're literally this far apart from each other. That's all I was complaining about.
I was expecting more dead pseudo rebels.
We can call
The
them
Rebel
rebels.
Alliance is,
They're rebels.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was expecting more dead rebels.
Yeah.
And quicker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I agree with
expected that.
Derek.
Yeah.
I was expecting them to hit more targets because they seem to suddenly get much better at aiming when the only thing they had to hit was the back of a droid.
Yeah. Although in defense of them shooting at Ned B, he's a much bigger target.
Yep.
That's true.
I will say this about stormtroopers missing stuff. For decades now, I've talked about how the ones in Episode 4 miss because they were ordered to do so. Because those guys actually get better when we go to Hoth and Empire Strikes Back, etc. However,
They're great on the Tantive 4.
it's important to remember that those stormtroopers we're talking about in Episode 4 and Episode 5 are Vader's 501st. They're like the creme de la creme. These guys are like, I don't know, Stormtrooper Jobber Squad number 12. Maybe they're just either
they're part of the Inquisitor.
Yeah, they're
regime.
they're really bad because they're just chumps because we don't have clones anymore, so we don't have that type of military acumen. Or B, how
It's been
Tala
10
was,
years, Scott. It's been 10 years.
It has. But how Tala was I was all about the Empire, and then I realized what a bunch of jerks they were, and so my heart wasn't in it anymore. Maybe you've got stormtroopers who are just like, oh, dang, I can't shoot women and children. This is horrible. And so they're like Finn in Episode 7, where they're kind of fake it till you make it out of the Empire, and they're not really trying that hard to shoot little children and women.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
it's possible.
why not just quit, go, because you're going to die one way or the other. You're either going to kill them or they're going to kill you. So to me, just why
Maybe
don't you
like
just all
Reva,
team up
they're-
and kill Reva then, and then they can all
No,
fly
well,
away in a spaceship.
Maybe
This
like
actually,
Reva, they're biding their time.
well, and this
I
actually has
guess.
historical precedent here in the real world. There are people who get into the army and then realize that they just
Yep.
don't have the capacity to shoot at another human being for whatever reason, and they can't just get out of the army.
Yeah.
But they'll go and they'll shoot their guns up in the air, knowing that they're not going to hit anything, because they can't bring themselves to take a human life.
But if they shoot each other in the ass, then they can get medical disability. as well.
Yes.
And there's historical precedent for that as well.
Here's the part where Nathan brings up an episode of MASH.
Absolutely. There are several episodes of MASH
Yeah.
where things like that happen. There was one in particular where, and this was one of the earlier ones because Frank Burns operated on a particular person. He's not the greatest. But then Hawkeye looked at the wound. It's like, there's only one way that this man could have suffered this wound. And it's if, because of the angle of the shot, the only way you could get shot that way would be if you were standing in the boots that did the shooting.
Yeah.
Of course, Frank Burns missed that, but once Frank Burns, caught on, hey, wait a minute, no, we need to discharge this guy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but go ahead.
The Death Star troopers, those would not be the best troops, because how much boots on the ground are you actually going to be doing if you're on the Death Star? That's like
It's a cushy
It's a
post.
station job.
if you're in a Star Destroyer, yeah, those are like the real Marines.
Right.
But if you're on the Death Star, you're what we used to call a REMF, a rear echelon melon farmer. So those are not the guys that you're sending into battle. Those the guys that on Darth Vader's executor and the guys in the Star Destroyers and the guys stationed on Tatooine are the ones that are going to be fighting. These are the guys whose daddy got him a cushy job.
Yeah.
So you're saying these guys should have been better, then, is what you're saying, though, because they are the ones on the ground.
The Inquisitorial Stormtroopers should have been better?
Well, maybe, but if these are the same Stormtroopers that were in Fortress Inquisitus, they were more concerned about, man, I really hope my next rotation is somewhere not as creepy as this.
But, or would they not been Vader's 501st, though? I mean, I know they went down with Reva, but would that still not
I feel
be...
like if they're on the Star Destroyer with Vader, he brought them with him. He's like, this is the 501st. This is
To
the
me,
Imperial
I mean, if he's not going to go down right away, I assumed he would have sent his best troops to go get Obi-Wan.
But would this even still be the same 501st? Because we already saw one of the veterans, kind of kicked out on the streets in episode 2.
It's definitely not the clones.
It's not the clones. No. But even the recruited stormtroopers that get their way into the 501st are better than average.
Yeah,
stormtroopers.
Vader's fist.
Yeah.
But would he have the same affection for them? Would he really care the same way?
In some stories during the Civil War era, he does. He doesn't have the same affection, but he is still proud of them. Like, these are my guys.
They're still the best of the best.
He values them for their military competence, though. But it does still raise the question of, if these are the 501st, why didn't they kill more of the rebels?
Yeah.
So I think Derek is spot on with that being a weakness of the storytelling there.
Good gripe. My least favorite part of this episode was O'Shea Jackson not really doing much of anything. He even had a bowcaster, and we didn't get to see him blast somebody to pieces with it, because in contemporary Star Wars, bowcaster equals like handheld howitzer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a
he
big
doesn't have time
weapon.
to bleed.
That's right. I don't have time to bleed. Yeah. Anyway, it's a big time.
I thought we did see him hit one person.
If that happened, I missed it.
It was brief, but we did see it. But
okay,
it was not Chewbacca level.
No.
I wanted it to be a big moment for him to be all like, "Die, you stormtrooper scum!"
There was, by the way, a wonderful video a few years back where somebody actually did like the physics to find out how far the stormtroopers that Chewie shot on Starkiller Base actually flew. And it was somewhere like 100 feet based on the relative speed that they flew across camera, a rough average height, and like the angle. And like apparently
that kickback would be amazing.
Yeah. That's why you got to be a Wookiee to hold that thing. I love the idea. Also, maybe the whole point though here is, yes, Roken had a bowcaster, but it wasn't Chewbacca's bowcaster. Yeah. And so
it wasn't
I kind of
a
like
Wookiee
the idea
bowcaster.
that Chewie has like modded his up to be just like uber awesome,
And we never saw Chewbacca's bowcaster do that sort of thing in the original trilogy, even though he had the bowcaster then.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that he souped it up sometime between Endor and The Force Awakens.
Probably so.
We really just see him shoot that one speeder bike, don't we?
He has it in the Death Star in A New Hope.
I think he
uses
may
it.
shoot
No,
one or
It
he
two.
does,
uses
but
the
I don't.
machine gun in the Death Star. He's got like the long rifle. Remember, because they march him into the thing. Han's got the big
Oh,
rifle.
he does at that point
Yeah.
in the detention center.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
but he does have his bowcaster.
he just never uses it.
Cor-
yeah, I can't think of a
Well,
time
you
where
never,
we.
yeah, true. You never actually see him shoot it. But
Yeah.
assuming that they have the point when Han's shooting and behind him, we just never get to see it. But you would think Chewie's shooting at some point.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
They
that's
couldn't
my
afford
light
that in the
gripe,
budget.
is that I wanted Roken to do more during the fight. I feel like they've kind of wasted him as an actor on this character. I mean, he's not doing a bad job. They're just not giving him much to do, especially
Yeah, they
since
make a big deal out of it, right? And then don't do anything.
yeah, especially since O'Shea himself was on Twitter talking about, where do people see what I get to do? And I'm wondering if he did some stuff that somehow got cut.
Or that
Or-
was
Or
it. He
it's-
got to shoot the bowcaster.
Maybe so. Or
Or
it's
if
coming
it's
up.
in next episode.
Yeah, it's
'Cause,
coming up
I
in
mean,
part
he's still
6.
around.
Maybe. Yeah, he's still
Yeah,
he's
because
still there
Tala
for sure.
isn't. So
Yeah. So yeah,
What?
okay. So moving right along to question number 3: what connections did you see to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy? I'll go first this time around. It's because finally, Tala got killed, and that's been something that we predicted and expected based on the call signs of the Z-95 headhunters in Return of the Jedi, and how they're named Tala 1 and Tala 2. And then we have, of course, Rogue Squadron. It's like this idea that the rebels like to name things in honor of people that got killed for the cause. So we just knew she had to die at some point. So this was it. Although I was sad to see Ned B go out, because I was kind of hoping that he would continue, but he does his best impersonation of K2SO here. Okay, Lee, you've got like a mile-long list of connections. So that was my one thing that I wanted to make sure I got to say before you took it. I don't know if you were going to mention Tala's death, but there you go.
No, that one that was not on my list. I will say there is a kid in the credits named Coran or Corin,
Yep.
as in Corin Horn. We do know that there is a Rogue Squadron something on the docket. I know it's been pushed back, but he was part of the post-war Rogue Squadron, Force sensitive, all sorts of cool stuff there. When they're fighting in that duel and Anakin starts kind of just beating Obi-Wan down and he takes a knee, that's the same moves that Luke was doing to Vader in episode 6. Interesting. It's kind of a tie into these two things. There are other ways to fight, and this weapon is your life. When you take those two, or there are alternatives to violence.
Yeah.
We have a lot that goes on with that kind of threads throughout the series. I mean, obviously, Anakin gets yelled at. You need this. This weapon is your life. He beats Anakin by taking the weapon away from him. Even though he himself has been disarmed, he's just kind of figured out how to do that. But also, through that lesson, he finds a way to beat him while being outmatched, which is really kind of a martial arts thing. You learn how to beat somebody better than you. Kind of a great thing. But then we also see when Luke defeats the Emperor, he does it by throwing the lightsaber away, by losing that weapon. And the alternative to fighting that Luke uses on Crate is not fighting. He really doesn't even try to duel or pretend to. He just dodges. And so we've got a lot of that. There's an interesting parallel to episode 1 when it's kind of interesting. Anakin is now the one that stabs somebody right through the stomach, leaves them to die. And that person and Obi-Wan are now concerned about the boy that is, from/on Tatooine. There was another one here. Oh, I'll leave the Unleashed stuff, but I just love that Ned B was using a droid army blaster.
Yeah. That was cool. It gave me.
And I want to point out the Grand Inquisitor thing looked like a Disney pin, like one
It
of the ones
did.
that you trade.
Yeah, we're going to be collecting this enamel pin for years to come because, oh my gosh,
Merchandising.
Merchandising. Good stuff. I like the parallel there between Luke using a different way to defeat the Emperor, and then also hear Obi-Wan trying to teach Anakin about different ways to fight. I really wanted him to say there are alternatives to fighting in this episode when he left, but it was close,
Yeah.
I guess they're trying not to be completely on the nose with the references here, just like we have not yet seen Ewan McGregor go, hello there. So, that's probably
I don't know. In the first episode, they did have that line about, well, I didn't come here to free the slaves. And I
That's
felt
true.
like that one was really on the nose.
Yes, although it wasn't a Jedi saying it, at least.
That's
Yeah.
true.
But yeah, it was definitely the line. Yeah.
And when you look at the fans getting mad that we have Han shooting first in Solo, they're like, "Oh, that's just stupid fan service." It's like it's exactly what we ask for every time. Just the specific thing you were hoping it was. Come on.
So I saw some tweets today about how this episode of Obi-Wan felt like Disney almost perfectly got the center cut of stuff that fans were asking for and stuff that serves the story. It was almost perfect, if not, in some people's opinions, just the perfect balance of that. Because, like Derek was saying, he'd been waiting for the... Dang it, my mirror is all wrong. He had been waiting for the flashback with the Clone Wars era stuff, Anakin as a apprentice and Obi-Wan as a master. But in addition to, oh yay, we finally got what the fans wanted, it was really well done and it served the story. It was an important beat of the story, not just fan service. If Kevin were here, he would say, what's wrong with fan service? And the answer, of course, is nothing, as long as it isn't there only to be fan service. Then it's just way too much hanging out all by itself. But this case, they didn't do that. They did really well. So I hope that who was the writer for this episode? The guy that was on Twitter last week getting totally pilloried for he never even watched episode 3. Toby something or other. I hope he gets vindicated by a lot of those fans. I mean, some of them probably just won't even mention him again. But good job. That guy.
Writers were Joby Harold, Andrew
Joby.
Stanton, and then obviously they gave it credit to George Lucas.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. I mean, I feel like you always have to.
So Stanton and Harold.
Yes, Harold is the guy who was getting absolutely tarred and feathered in social media for the whole misinterpreted interview where they're like, well, he didn't even watch Revenge of the Sith. And obviously he did, and he knew what was up. And sorry, I'm going to step on Derek and Nathan if I keep going here. Derek, what connections did you see to the
well, here's the connection I didn't see. Nobody lost a hand.
True.
And I was severely disappointed in that. So, no, the biggest connections I saw was obviously we got more. I was hoping Reva was going to, do her little spinny blade and fly off because she couldn't beat Darth Vader, but we didn't get that.
And we know that some Inquisitors can do that because we've seen them fly with those things.
So, and obviously we got the Grand Inquisitor back, right? So, you got that link. So obviously he lives, right? And he continues to be on. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of detail in episode 6, how that happened, right? Because I was assuming that was supposed to be the big reveal. Of course, it doesn't mean anything when you've already watched Rebels. But anyways.
But at least now we can stop hearing people complain about how, wow, Obi-Wan broke canon. Disney's contradicting themselves.
This isn't going to stop anybody from saying that Disney broke canon.
Not about the Grand Inquisitor. They'll have to say it about something else, which I'm sure they will.
And the big thing for me was, obviously nobody yelled out, the transport is away. The transport is away.
Yeah.
I was expecting an ion cannon
when they got away. It's like, oh no. Now, obviously the hyperdrive, we talked about that. And, they're saying, they're going to be chasing us. So I assume there was going to be a chase scene, but we didn't get that. So those are kind of the things that I'm pointing out that we didn't get connections, right? So I was hoping that they could have, because why not? If it's fan service, it would have went towards the plot for you, Scott. So
yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. We didn't get. I mean, we kind of got it, but it would have been cooler had they used in the whatchamacallit, when they had the shield door up when the original Imperials were trying to get in, they used a giant cannon, but they could have been cooler if they would have used like an E-web blaster, right? Because
I
that would have
thought
linked
it
it.
was an E-Web blaster at first,
Now it's some double
Yeah.
barrel job.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
it was almost like the opposite where on Hoth the rebels had the giant cannon, right? And this one
Yep.
was a mobile for the Imperials. So it was kind of reversed for that. We did get something that was something similar with Reva when she takes her lightsaber and goes through the blast door, right? So we've seen that in, you know, a new not a New Hope, Phantom Menace, right? When they're trying
Yeah.
to do that. So there was a connection there. And then what was else I was trying to think that we didn't get connections from? Obviously, we didn't get a giant space slug. We didn't get a bounty hunter, which I was a little bit disappointed in.
Oh yeah, we didn't get a bounty hunter. Yeah.
No, I mean we got him in episode 2, but we had that in episode actual, you know, movie 2 as well. So
Yes. By the way, you
and-
guys, I have learned because of a toy release or a toy preview, that
Yeah.
was not Forlom in part 2. It's a different droid called iJack or One Jack.
One Jack or iJack. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it would be
I think
it would
is
be one. It would be
yeah.
one because he's the same type as Forlom and he starts with the number 4. So just like IG-88 and there's IG-11 and everybody else, right? So it's just another droid assassin. So that's good to know. Disappointed though because then we won't get the Zuckuss reveal either.
Yeah, that means Zuckuss probably won't show up because that wasn't Forlom. Yeah.
And then, well, and we didn't get them tracking again, right? Because that's what happens in this one. Though we did get where the connection, nobody connected here. The only black character in the movie who's a bad guy turns out to be a good guy in some aspects.
Lando.
Right?
Yes,
Like
Lando.
Lando
the
3.0
flip-flop.
because you got to compare Finn as 2.0.
Yeah.
So
We do have O'Shea though, so we have two black people. So
okay.
it's getting more progressive in the galaxy far away.
but O'Shea doesn't appear to be a bad guy from the start.
If he turns out to betray everybody in episode 6, I'm going to be really upset because then it really will feel
Yeah.
like there's only one character arc for the actors of color.
For
in Star
our
Wars.
colored friends.
Yeah.
Can I point out two things?
Sure.
When they barred the doors, when you bar a door, that's for doors that open in or out. When they slide,
Yeah.
it does nothing.
Yeah,
Especially
well,
if
so
you got somebody with lightsabers that can cut through it easily, as we just saw
Yes.
that Obi-Wan knew.
So
And the
what
other thing-
happened? But what happened when they barred the doors was they put the thing there, and then droids would come and weld it. So it was more like a
Locking
joint
mechanism.
piece than a barricade. I
Yeah,
thought.
but it didn't. Obviously, like with lightsabers, which
Oh, there was
one would have
the-
known. Like
That, of course, begs the question: why was Third Sister standing out there going "shell the door" when she should have just walked up at part 1 and
Yes.
been all,
Yeah.
bzzzt, you know?
Well, we know she's a
Possible.
good guy, or some. She wanted them to escape. That was the
That's
whole
true.
point,
That's
right?
true. She was
So-
all like, "Oh,
and there's also like the psychological effect of just it's the reason why we call PTSD or used to call PTSD shell shock.
Yeah.
Like the psychological effect of soldiers in the trenches just hearing those explosions drove them crazy, and even if they never saw a German soldier.
right."
The other thing I wanted to point out, until somebody tells me otherwise, that dinosaur bounty hunter, I'm calling him Denver, the last dinosaur.
Yes.
He's my friend and a whole lot more. That's
Oh, God.
that's who he is. From now to
Denver, the
eternity.
last dinosaur.
So on
Nathan,
the
you
subject
had
of the
something-
doors,
Nathan, you had something intelligent to say here?
a possible reason why she might not have tried the lightsaber first. When Qui-Gon uses the lightsabers on the doors in The Phantom Menace, he can't just slice them open. They're too thick for that. He basically melts them.
Yeah.
And when the droidekas show up, he realizes, okay, we don't have time to cut through the doors. Now, obviously, it turned out that the doors are much thinner on this planet than the ones in The Phantom Menace, but
It's
she
'cause
may
the
not
Trade
have...
Federation has a bigger budget.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she may not have known that.
Well, there's the Bacon Guild behind them.
So she may have realized once she got close enough, she's like, wait, I can hear
Yeah, they're talking. through
Kenobi
it,
on the
right?
other side. This door is not that thick.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah,
just slice this thing open. I thought if I tried it that way, I'd be standing there for like 10 minutes just waiting for the door to melt.
Well, I was hoping that there was gonna be like a little slider and that they would talk each other like in the Wizard of Oz, but that didn't happen either. So.
yeah.
But anyways, I was trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head as I'm going backwards. Obviously, we made a connection to the hyperdrive / the door, right, and then the droid and them having to do those stuff in the wiring, right, like we see in the Millennium Falcon. Leia didn't make any comments of like what C-3PO, hopping on one leg. Nobody was hopping on one leg. And we didn't have any Ugnaughts. Then trying to think. My biggest thing here, and obviously this goes into the next question here, but I won't go too much detail into it. But obviously the connection for me is that Vader kills Reva thinking she's dead, and she's not, right? Or at least we're assuming at this point she's not. It's the same parallel that, Vader thought he killed Luke, or Luke died when he fell down and landed in the weather vane, right?
He assumed his death, yeah, and so
Yeah.
he may be assuming Reva's death here, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Interesting.
so, okay, Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan, what connections? Anything left?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
There's
all
quite a
right.
few things left actually. So a couple of things bookending the episode. We start off with something very similar to the whole "that's it, that's the system, the rebels are there" from Vader, and then we end with Vader watching helplessly as the good guys make their escape in a scenario where they weren't supposed to because of a sabotage. And Vader is just so angry that he doesn't do anything. In Empire Strikes Back, he killed several of his officers for failures, but in that last scene, he's so mad that he doesn't even bother killing anybody. I got the same vibes off of him at the end of this episode. We also had a parallel to episode 6. I know we're one episode early on that, but when Obi-Wan gave himself up voluntarily, that was very reminiscent of Luke giving himself up, and saying, "Yeah, bring me before the Emperor," or whatever. But it's my last-ditch effort to get my father to turn back to the light side. For Obi-Wan, this was his last-ditch effort to get the Inquisitors to stop chasing the rebels. We also had a parallel because Vader offers for Luke to join him, and together we will rule the Empire as father and son. We had a similar offer there of Reva and Obi-Wan. Hey, if we work together, we can bring down Vader. We can take charge.
Yes, totally.
So that was a big parallel in making that offer between the hero and the villain.
So obviously we know that wasn't going to work because we've all seen episodes 4, 5, and 6. But
And Vader's not dead.
But however, did it not work because Reva didn't actually go for it? She seemed to be doing her own thing on Vader.
Oh no! I think they decided to go with the plan in this case, but the plan was I'm going to distract Obi-Wan, saying I'm going to distract Vader by escaping, and while he's paying attention to that, he's not going to be paying attention to you sneaking up behind him and killing him.
Well, then she just has terrible timing.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
She should have gone for it while he was busy ripping up the decoy ship.
Yeah.
But then again, perhaps the whole series we've looked at how Reva has terrible timing.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
So,
Except when she gut stabs the Grand Inquisitor.
True. Now, I have heard that Rupert, the actor for the Grand Inquisitor, has said that he somehow spilled the beans unintentionally that Reva had stabbed the Grand Inquisitor in his second stomach, which is not an important organ for Puans. How do you say it, Nathan?
I'm assuming we'll get that reveal in episode 6 because he wouldn't normally know that, so it has to be some dialogue or storytelling in episode 6 for that.
Yeah, but what I meant was he said it somewhere, so I think he accidentally spilled the beans.
I think that might
Rebel
be
spilled the beans.
Actually, the bean spilled out of that second stomach when he got stabbed in it.
Hey,
I don't know that that's going to be a line of dialogue necessarily, because this is another parallel, but this time to Darth Maul. Well, formerly Darth. He survives because of his anger and hate and the need for revenge, much like Maul did.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a dark side power that if you are just too angry to die, you can survive what should be a fatal wound.
Okay.
Which I think Reva's doing the exact same thing here.
Yes, and that's why we'll get to that question later.
Yeah.
Anything else, Nathan?
I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm sure I can find more parallels if I look, but I mean,
A nice,
pretty much the whole
nice
episode was parallels.
yeah, a nice nod that I enjoyed was we got to see a thermal detonator for the first time in a little while, where Tala used one to go out with a bang.
And the
so that
restraining
was
bolt.
Return of the Jedi.
That's right.
So-
Yeah, we're one, as Nathan just said a few minutes ago, we're one movie ahead of time. But yeah, Nathan, Mita and I joked around about how Lola has now demonstrated to us the tiniest restraining bolt ever. It's like USB restraining bolt. Boop.
Which makes me wonder how old of technology are they using on Tatooine that their restraining bolts are like this big.
Well, that's the Jawas, right? They just grab whatever they can find, and it's like dial-up internet or rotary phones.
Well, it's probably from the ancient wars, right? That because wasn't Tatooine at some point like they said was a water planet or
Oh yeah,
a
the Duke
forest,
Sea
right?
was once
So
an actual sea. Yeah.
at some point, there was a giant, probably Sith versus Republic war, or the Jedi versus the Sith war, and there was starships that crashed just like in Jakku, but we don't see any because they're already buried under the sand or decomposed at this point.
The Great
But,
Hyperspace War, Derek. The Great Hyperspace War. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, well, so we've had some really thick discussion already. We still got 2 questions to go, but we want to take a quick break here so that we can get ready for those last, 3 questions. We actually have a bonus question for this episode because holy cow. But we're going to take a quick break and listen to Kevin tell us all about other shows, including Lee's show, The Blood of Kings.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Blood of Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, rock on. Thanks very much, Kevin. Okay, guys, moving right along to custom question number 4. Derek, you booted up all these questions for this episode, so go right ahead.
All right. The first question is, what happens with Reva? As we were talking about before we went to the break, we talked a little bit about the connections with Reva there. So, what's going to happen with her? Does the holocron mean anything? Will she piece the 2 kids together as Anakin's kids? I mean, just what do you guys think with that whole point? That was one of the things that was a little wishy-washy for me, right? Lee joked about it, right? How they made Obi-Wan and Bail really bad spies because they're doing all this stuff. Obviously, Obi-Wan handing it to, Ranji makes no sense, right? You would have been better off handing it to Leia. in
Right,
some
yeah,
aspect,
definitely.
right?
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that it's damaged, so she hears this unscattered message, but it's like, okay, but what is she going to do with it? Is she pissed off at Obi-Wan now for no particular reason, or what? You know. So, anyways, what do you guys think?
So my theory, I'll give credit to my beautiful bride Mita because she mentioned this when we watched the episode today. She said that she feels that Reva is now going to go to Tatooine to try and kill Vader's kids as a way to get revenge against Vader. Since she doesn't have the chutzpah necessary to beat the man himself, she's going to attack his children, and that will give us an episode 6/part 6 combo callback payoff because she'll get the whole moment of, wait, Leia is Luke's sister, which happened in Return of the Jedi, but in this case, it will be Reva putting it together just in time to get killed by, I don't know, Obi-Wan or maybe even the Grand Inquisitor himself. And so, therefore, we'll get that moment of reveal of the siblings, but then she'll die before she can really spill the beans, if you will, to someone else.
Are those beans in the Grand Inquisitor's stomach again?
The beans in the Grand Inquisitor's stomach, that's right. And so that will be the thing that helps us have that Return of the Jedi callback of the realization of the brother-sister relationship between Luke and Leia. But it's a little weird to me. I'm not quite sold on the idea that Reva is going to take that information and use it for evil, if you will. But then again, I can't think of any way that she would take it and use it for good. So I don't really know what's going to happen, but I like Mita's theory that it's going to be a point of revenge, because we get the impression, like Nathan just said, from the Grand Inquisitor, that as a quasi-dark side user, Reva's going to use her hatred to keep herself alive long enough to go get revenge in some way. And, hey, I'm going to kill your kids. That's pretty deadgum evil revenge right there. So that's my prediction about what's going to go down with Reva and the information. Also, I believe she heard it enough to where she can put it together that Owen Lars is the guy who has Luke, because the chunk of the hologram that she was able to see included Owen Lars' name, if not Lars, at least Owen. And she knows his name because she met him on Tatooine in the town square. So, yeah, that's what I got. Lee, what do you think?
I think you pretty much nailed it. You also do hear boy when in that message, so it's like, yeah, she was kind of already, she knew there was something going with Owen. I think the holocron is just kind of that MacGuffin that ruins everything, just gives them everything. I don't know that she'll piece the two of them together as the kids, but I think that she will definitely see this as a pain point for Kenobi to kind of go after him. But what I think is going to happen is that she's going to meet up with Asajj Ventress, played by Angelina Jolie. And they just get,
Quinlan
really
lost.
Ship. Yeah. And they just get a really cool ship and go Thelma Louise across the galaxy. And they just have like their own, former Sith girl power, just badass road trip. That's what I'm hoping to see. I know I probably won't, but it's already in my headcanon.
So the opposite of Sabine and Ahsoka, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. They're the dark mirror of Sabine and Ahsoka.
Or like the fun mirror, because Sabine and Ahsoka are too serious.
Look, man, I am 1990s enough that if there was a way to get Angelina Jolie into Star Wars as a Sith babe, I'm there, dude. That's one fan service. One fan service that I would accept without any good storyline. Just go for it. Nathan, what are your thoughts about question 4 here?
So, as much as I enjoy the idea of them going all Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy on us, I think Scott's actually way close.
At the same time.
That's right. Yeah. Like, oh wait, new plan. I like this allegory better. All right.
I think Scott's way closer to right. There's no way that they put the name Owen in there. They garble up the transmission, but make sure that we get the name Owen. Make sure that we hear there's a boy involved. She knows to go back to Tatooine, and Luke will be there. I mean, she doesn't know the name Luke, but she knows, hey, there's something up with this boy that Owen is protecting. I think Scott's right that she's going to go, well, his sin was killing younglings, so I'm going to, let the sins of the father be revisited upon the son.
Yeah.
And I think Obi-Wan will realize that, hey, this feeling that I'm getting, this is what's going on, and that's going to lead him back to Tatooine, and they'll have a final match there where he will be trying to convince her, hey, this is the chosen one. We need to protect him so that he can do what we failed to do. And I'm thinking that she will recognize that Luke and Leia are brother and sister, because her insight will serve her well, because that would be another parallel.
Yep.
But I'm also thinking that Obi-Wan will end up having to kill her, but in the end, she will do a bit like Maul did and a bit like Vader did, and kind of come back to the light at the end and say and have regrets.
And Kylo.
And Kylo too. Yeah,
Although Kylo's return to the light, he got a lot more done
he did.
because
Yes,
he had a lot more time to be on the good side. So that's interesting.
I'm thinking this is going to be a redemption equals death type moment. In part because I don't think that Reva fits in still being alive with the movies. She's a little too powerful to be a light side force user.
Well, none of the Inquisitors do, right? Technically,
Then
all of them
again,
vanquish.
for many years, we said the same thing about Ahsoka Tano, and
That's
we
true.
now know that she lived through the whole Galactic Civil War and is now doing
And we
stuff
just-
post Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, we just didn't see her. So it is possible.
I mean,
but
Lee's right. She could become a bounty hunter, right?
Totally.
She could, yeah.
Derek, what's your own answer to your own question?
I mean, really, my end of the point is I don't care what it is. She just needs to die. Just for the continuation point, right? Like I said, they've done a little bit better with her character. Maybe we'll get a little bit better character arc with her, but it's almost point where, again, she's supposed to be the big baddie. I just never really completely fell in love with this character like I do some of the villains that we've been getting like in the MCU, right, where they're a lot better written. So at this point, it's just kind of like, okay, just finish it off. I mean, we got a high point in episode 5. I'm hoping it doesn't fall completely flat in episode 6, but we'll get into that future predictions too here. But yeah, I feel like at this point she has to die, just to keep the continuity going. So
Nathan?
I have a piggyback question on this question. Yeah, that. What do we think happened to Reva in the Jedi Temple? I wasn't clear if she was actually stabbed, and those are memories of her being stabbed, or if she's like projecting.
Yeah, I think she's projecting it onto her memories because she talks about hiding amongst the other dead children, which I noted that sadly Disney had to put a warning label at the front of this episode because this week in the United States we've had talk of children having to hide amongst dead children in real life, which is just horrible. But it was at least important enough for them to put that warning label, and it shows that it's always a parallel. People like to talk about, I don't want a lot of lessons in my Star Wars. Well, George was all about the Vietnam War in the first place, so that's an important parallel here. But to your point, Nathan, I think she was projecting it onto her memories. She didn't actually get stabbed during Order 66, but now her brain was sort of conflating the two because it's like Anakin finally finished the job when it comes to her squad of Padawans because he finally stabs her like he did all of her friends. Okay, Derek, question numero 5.
So do we think this is finally the turning point for Obi-Wan? Will he regain his full force power? I mean, we finally get, to me, General Kenobi, right? We didn't really bring that up in the parallels, or the question 3 when it talks about, the things. But, Obi-Wan was a general, right? He was leading the Rebel Alliance there, right? And he's telling them what to do, going back into his heyday. Obviously, he feels a little bit more comfortable with his lightsaber and using it, right? Before he was very hesitant. Now he's just whipping it out, deflecting, blaster bolts. So overall, what do we think, about Obi-Wan? Is this to the turning point, or is there still something that needs to happen that in episode 6?
Nathan, what you got?
I think this is not the turning point for him yet. I think the turning point will come in episode 6. In well, I say episode 6, part 6, because
Yeah.
in episode 6, Luke goes back to Dagobah and has a conversation with Yoda. And of course, Yoda gets so fed up with his questions, he just rolls over and dies.
I can't take it anymore.
But I think we'll have a similar moment in part 6 where Obi-Wan talks to Qui-Gon. And I'm hoping
There is another.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that Liam Neeson actually shows up as Ghost
So I think
Qui-Gon.
it'll just be voice. I don't think it'll be Force Ghost, but I agree with you that Qui-Gon will be involved.
I think you're right, but I hope you're wrong.
yeah.
This is definitely in the I hope territory, not the I think territory. But I do think that we will get Liam Neeson's voice, and that Obi-Wan will talk to Qui-Gon and confess the fact that he feels like he's not living up to what he should be doing. And that will help motivate him to have that final confrontation with Reva. And during that final confrontation, that's when he'll really come back to being that Jedi Master that he's supposed to be.
I like that. And I'm gonna.
So what you're saying is we're gonna get Apollo Creed instead.
I agree with you, Nathan, that we will have full power Obi-Wan, as it were, after the pep talk from Qui-Gon in part 6 of the Obi-Wan series. And I think that will be our parallel to Return of the Jedi when Obi is, when Luke, has visitations from the Force Ghost. I'm trying to think if there's. I also think that part will happen before he has to fight Reva again, because he'll be using all of his Force powers to fight Reva. Lee, what do you think about question number 5 here?
I think that there has to be a moment where Obi-Wan just decisively smacks down Vader, because otherwise we're not going to have the "when last we met I was the learner but now I'm the master." That line made sense if the last time they saw was at Mustafar, or if there was just a decisive smackdown here. I also it would be interesting if they found a way for Vader to say, if I do have a son out there, make sure he gets this lightsaber, just so we can have that continuity error actually work now.
It's like making the Kessel Run take less than 12 parsecs,
Yeah.
because you had to have we had to have basically a whole movie to explain that weird continuity error.
But I think we know where everybody ends up. We know that Leia ends up back on Alderaan. We know that Luke stays on Tatooine. We know that Obi-Wan's there, and that they don't really interact much, because it's not like they're obviously old friends. I'm still keeping my fingers crossed for Thelma and Louise. But as far as his full Force power, I don't think so. I think that he's going to gain wisdom and something that's beyond power, because trying to beat Anakin with power is how everybody lost.
Mm-hmm.
And beating Anakin by manipulating his mind and by manipulating instinct and by taking away the reasons that he's strong, that's how you beat a better fighter. And I think that's what, even with last week's episode where we see Obi-Wan regaining like that mastery of Soresu, which is a defensive and deflective martial art. I think we're going to see Obi-Wan winning on his terms rather than trying to win on Anakin's terms or Vader's terms. So however they figure out a way to do that, if they do, I think that's what I'm going to be waiting for.
Awesome. All right, Derek, your answer to question 5?
I agree with you guys. I think that really at this point there still needs to be a little bit more of an aha moment. But I think it'll reconnect his full potential, I should say, maybe not full power, but his full potential with the Force, right? And now he'll be able to commune with Qui-Gon, right? So I'm thinking it's going to happen differently. I'm thinking he's going to have to commune with the Force to save. And when I not commune with the Force, let me reword that, because that's communing with Qui-Gon. He'll have to reconnect with the Force and trust in the Force in order to save Luke from Reva. By doing that, that'll then allow him to contact Qui-Gon, which will be the Stinger, which will then not have him battle Vader for what Lee's talking about, because that's going to happen in season 2.
Ooh. Okay. I like where that's headed. And I also like the idea that when Obi-Wan needs to save Luke, he'll be able to connect to the Force fully. And that means that it's because the Cosmic Force wills for Luke to survive. And it didn't matter what Obi-Wan had in mind. But the Cosmic Force, because we all know for sure that Luke's got to be there to confront his father. That's like important.
It's his destiny.
It's his destiny. That's important for the whole galaxy for all time, right? And so the Cosmic Force wills that to happen. So whether Obi-Wan wants it to happen or not, it's going to happen. You know, the Force is going to, as Kanan Jarrus taught us, the Force is going to make you do the things that you need to do, whether that be from the Bindu or the daughter or the brother or the daughter or the son or the father. Anyway, so yeah, good stuff, Derek. Good stuff. All right, we have a question number 6 for this episode.
Yeah, and really at this point we've talked a bit about it in these past 2 questions, kind of predictions for episode 6. Anything that you guys want to bring up that you think that we didn't cover that's still going to have to happen in episode 6? Any parallels in movie 6 to episode 6 of Obi-Wan that you're hoping to predict?
So in Return of the Jedi, the Ewoks save the day, or help save the day. There won't be any Ewoks on Tatooine because, you know, that's not how that works, but we will have Jawas saving the day. That's my prediction for a parallel part 6 Obi-Wan to episode
what was
6
his name?
Return of the Jedi. We have a Jawa, a named Jawa.
Do.
We have our Wicket parallel. What was his name? Tuba? I'll have to look it up. Lee, do you have anything else you want to add for question 6?
I just want to see a knockdown, drag out brawl, or something so out of left field that it just changes the way I look at Star Wars. I love fan service, a lot of times for these, but I want something that fits in with what we've established, but gives a completely different context. So I hope I'm surprised next week more than anything.
Tika, the Jawa's name that was stealing Obi-Wan stuff and selling it back to him, was Tika.
Oh yeah, because I thought it was Teacup.
That's right. Yep. So I would not be surprised if not only do Jawas save the day, but Tika plays the Wicket parallel. So there you have it. Nathan.
Tika brings in his sandcrawler full of Jawas. Yes, I love that idea. So I'm going to go the opposite of what Lee said. I'm going to say that, not just now, but a little bit earlier, I don't think we're going to get a fight between Obi-Wan and Vader. I think in A New Hope, what Vader says is, "When I left you, I was but the learner." I think with that line, he was talking about mid episode 3, before Mustafar, even when he stopped being Obi-Wan's Padawan. The thing about the last time I met you was, this is a presence I haven't felt since ... and the ... could be anytime. It could be it's a presence I haven't felt since Jabin.
I always thought that the ... was the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, right? Each dot is one prequel, right?
Yeah, no, because oddly enough, the text scrolls are not consistent as to whether they have 3 dots or 4 dots.
Yes. Well, Lucas was always going back and editing his punctuation. Isn't that pretty much his whole style?
It really is.
Okay, Derek, your answer to question 6.
The one thing that actually 2 things. Do we get to see Jabba?
I mean, that would be a Return of the Jedi parallel, and we're on Tatooine.
Do we get a giant Rancor beast of some sort?
Oh, yeah.
So,
do
we actually get a
old
great
is Muchi
dragon
at this point?
So,
could the Bad Batch show up?
Oh, that'd be so cool.
We talked about the Bad Batch last episode, Lee, when they were talking about what was in the Amber. I said there should have been one of the Bad Batch members in the Amber, but we didn't get that.
One thing we haven't really gotten on the Obi-Wan show is Star Wars Creeksters. I guess technically the Land Shark, but it was already dead. And the Eope, but he was almost there as an Easter egg.
Yeah, but I thought the land shark was more of a callback to the giant fish scene, right? Because it was a land shark, right? It was a shark underwater.
Clawfish.
Either the clawfish or the Sandorian aqua monster, or whatever, right? So
I thought it was
I-
Turgo,
I-
honestly.
I just realized a
Oh.
Paradox episode 1 from part 1
Oh, what's that, man?
regarding the land shark. The food that Jar Jar tries to eat does appear aquatic,
Oh,
which always stood out as weird to me because they're on Tatooine.
yeah.
Like, why would you import? like why would some random
sushi.
cart vendor on the side of the road in Mos Espa have aquatic food? But maybe Tatooine is largely populated with aquatic-esque animals
They just swim in the
that
sand.
swim around in the sand instead of the ocean.
Well, if you think about the
We've seen
lizard,
Aqualish Core in there.
yeah, but
Yeah.
also the lizard monster that Boba Fett has to fight is semi-aquatic.
The four-armed.
The
The
Clash of
Goliath.
the Titans looking guy.
The Gorn.
The Gorn, yes, the Gorn, yes, the Gorn, yes. Okay, well, we do have a little tiny bit of Star Wars news to talk about on this episode before we jump into some T-shirts and then get out of here. And that is an update from Taika Waititi about his Star Wars movie. Derek, you had placed this on the outline for the show, so
Yep.
I'll let
It
you
was
jump
from
in.
Yeah, it was from IndieWire.com. It was their interview. The title was Taika Waititi will expand Star Wars away from pre-existing characters, forget prequel origin stories. And that's not obviously meaning he's going to totally neglect canon. But the idea here, I really love his quotes in here. So he says, first off, he says, look, I think for the Star Wars universe to expand, it has to expand. I don't think that I'm any use in the Star Wars universe making a film where everyone's like, oh, great. Well, that's the blueprints to the Millennium Falcon. Ah, that's Chewbacca's grandmother. So he says it feels like it should be, it needs that stands alone. That's great. Though I'd like to take something new and create some new characters and just expand the world. Otherwise, it feels like it's a very small story. So, hurrah. He gets it.
I support Waititi's idea here that he wants to expand the universe some, because that's something that Star Wars.
Very large galaxy.
It is a very large galaxy. Star Wars has a grand history of expanding the universe when it comes to ancillary materials like video games, novels, comic books. I was telling Nathan last episode about General Tag, and his brother and sister from the Marvel Star Wars comic. Even that, though, is pretty much movie adjacent because General Tag is on the Death Star in A New Hope. Mm-hmm. However, expanding upon his family there was really cool of the old school 1980s Star Wars Marvel comics. And so I think that the ground is fertile for something like this from, especially as a talented a filmmaker as Taika Waititi. And I did love his line about how we don't want it to turn into everyone going, oh, look, there's Chewbacca's grandma. Because no offense to our friends in the old expanded universe, but
or Nathan, because Nathan probably wants to see Chewbacca's grandma.
He probably does.
Well, I want to see Chewbacca's entire family.
Yeah.
And, well, we've seen quite a few of them in the holiday special.
But sometimes, what I was going to say was the old 1990s EU, sometimes it was a little too much, let's do a story in this novel about the third bass player of Figure and Dan and the modal nodes. It's like, I don't necessarily need to see exactly all this stuff happening with the band at the cantina, just so that you can say, well, this is canon and it's connected to the movies. So yeah, I, as a fan of Star Wars The Old Republic, which doesn't have hardly any connection to the movie eras, I'm excited to see what Waititi will do with this idea of telling an independent Star Wars story. Lee, what are your thoughts about this news article from Waititi?
I like the idea. I love Taika Waititi. Everything he does is just ridiculously funny, whether he's acting or directing. I just finished watching the first season of Our Flag Means Death.
Yes.
The most unexpected Blackbeard. And I'm including John Malkovich's horrible television show from about 10 years back. I've seen many variations of Blackbeard. I've never seen one dressed like the Kurgan, who is that odd. And I do hope that he stays true to form. He will take any genre and ask, what if they were stupid and bisexual? He did it with vampires. He did it with Norse gods. He did it with what's his name?
And it's all a lot of 80s references.
Yeah, he did it with pirates. He did it with what's his name? Deadpool. Like he just keeps on, having this weird relationship with people and just like turning everything on its side. I hope that he is allowed to do that, and I hope that they don't do what they did to Lord and Miller.
Yeah. And say, whoa, it's too funny, and we're gonna kick you out. Yeah.
And then they go on and win the Academy Award later on that year for the other franchise movie that they did at the same time. So
yeah. I think if Solo had maintained Lord and Miller, we'd have had a whole different history of Star Wars in the Disney era.
And I will go to bat for Solo. I think it makes 5 through 8 better.
Yeah,
Solo's a good movie.
I agree. Nathan, thoughts on Wachiti? No Chewbacca's grandma?
Well, as much as I'll miss having Chewbacca's grandmother, and Scott, I just don't know why you don't want a story about Liren Karn, the backup clue horn player in Figure into Anne's modal notes.
I picked that example just so I knew that you could make that reference. So thank you, and you're welcome.
Nathan, you complete me.
So I think Visions really showed us that there's a lot that we can do with Star Wars that doesn't have to be part of the Galactic Civil War or the Skywalkers or anything in that relatively small time period. And it's great that we've got the High Republic stuff, but at the same time, we kind of know where that's going. Mm-hmm. And to bring it back to Kenobi, there was a point in this episode where I thought, I'm not really scared that Kenobi's going to fail here. He's talking to Reva. Reva could, backstab him at any moment and just kill him out of the blue, but you won't.
We know that she can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I never felt worried for him or Anakin in the prequels.
Right. And I knew Reva was going to fail to kill Vader because Vader's still around. Mm-hmm. I think Star Wars would really benefit from saying, hey, let's look 50, 100, 200 years, 900 years in the future. It's a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. There's a lot of centuries that we can cover before we get up to our present.
And of course, our adventures in the Star Wars MMO, the Old Republic, show, and our adventures in Knights of the Old Republic, show that you can tell some really compelling Star Wars stuff in those time frames. So, I think it's going to be great.
Plus, if we have it within like 50 years of, Star Wars Episode 4, you can't really have anything happen that doesn't either tie into it. It'd be like talking about, 20th century history and not having World War I or World War II mentioned. You can't do it. It's impossible.
It just won't work. Right.
But I think if you get like 50 to 100 years beyond Episode 9, then you can start separating it. But even 50 years, it's still recent memory.
Yeah.
It's like the Vietnam War was in the 70s. We still talk about that today, and that was 50 years ago. So
there was a reference to the Vietnam War in the hottest streaming series today, and that being in Stranger Things season 4. Hopper talks about dealing with the fallout from Agent Orange and his friends and PTSD. I mean, that's still Vietnam, folks, and I realize that Stranger Things is set in the 1980s, but the point is the writers wrote about it today. So, yeah.
And the Vietnam War happened specifically because of World War I and World War II.
That's exactly right. We wouldn't have had Part 2 if we hadn't had the Great War, and we wouldn't have had the Cold War if we hadn't had World War II.
Which is really all Star Wars anyways, because it's
history.
From one war to the next.
Yes.
But there is a big reason that I am excited that Taika Waititi himself is the one saying this, and that's because in the Suicide Squad, the Rat was voiced by none other than D. Bradley Baker. Which means he can still be involved.
That's
even
right.
if he's not a clone.
Good times. Okay, well, let's get to Derek's favorite part of the show before we wrap up this episode, and that is, of course, what Star Wars t-shirt are we wearing this week? Lee, as special guest, what Star Wars t-shirt do you have on this week?
Well, I actually changed out a few minutes ago because I made the reference, but Han shot first.
Oh, yes, it's even got the DL-44 on the shirt. Good times.
Yeah, I picked this up a little while ago. I had been wearing my Tipsy Tauntaun shirt to go with the old Drunken Gungan, but I'm like, I got to stay on brand today. So
Absolutely. Derek, what Star Wars t-shirt are you wearing?
So, as I mentioned on Star Wars Day, I did my annual buy a bunch of Star Wars shirts off of Turtle Tea because they're 50% off. So, I showed you guys one of them, which was the What a Piece of Junk shirt with not Anakin, Luke and Han talking to each other there. And this one I have to go with because I like the prequels and we had a little bit of Anakin today.
Oh, all right, it's Chibi Padme. Yes, good times.
It's Chibi midriff Padme.
That's right. Yes, it's
the best Padme.
Fancy pants Padme. Yes, good times. I love it. And she's got the Rebel Alliance symbol floating there behind her. So yeah, good times. The Phoenix Starbird.
And she got her little gun and everything. So
yep, she's ready to kick some dark side butt.
Genuine Ocean butt.
Yep. Okay, Nathan, what you got?
Well, Kenobi is a show about a man who has no children of his own, who is taking care of a child, trying to rescue a child. So I'm referencing a show where that happens, and it is a Star Wars show, but it's The Mandalorian because I'm wearing a 4-up of the child, baby Grogu. And this shirt came out before we knew his name was Grogu, so this is the child, but it is the Mandalorian shirt here.
Good times, good times. Well, I enjoyed all of the setup for Episode 4, A New Hope, and of course, it's my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. So I am wearing, but in deference to Lee's comments about martial arts and how the fighting choreography in this episode of Obi-Wan was really great, I'm wearing my Japanese Star Wars poster from the 1970s, the classic one of all of our main heroes grouped together with Vader and the Death Star looming behind them. It's the one where Luke is pointing his blaster at the camera. And it also has Alec Guinness Obi-Wan on it somewhere down there at the bottom. Yeah, there he is. Also, it's one of the only posters that features Grand Moff Tarkin, so that's kind of cool. So yeah, if you guys want to get your own awesome What a Piece of Junk t-shirt, please head over to our TeePublic store. Just go to teepublic.com and search up the Fandom Podcast Network, and you can get t-shirts, mouse pads, iPad cases, coffee mugs, any kind of cool stuff like that from our merchandising department. All right, Nathan, would you let folks know where they can find the show out there on the old interwebs?
Absolutely. We're all over the interwebs. You can find us on Apple Podcast, on Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. Basically, anywhere you get your podcast, you can find us. You can also find us on Facebook with the What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. Derek helps run that. And you can email us at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. Scott may or may not tell us if you emailed us.
Oh, wait, am I supposed to be checking? I'm just kidding. I do check it, everybody. I do.
But we also have Twitter at What Wars or Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network. And Derek, tell us about the Apple Podcast reviews. Why we want to see those.
Well, not just Apple, but any of the podcast review platforms that are out there. So when you're listening to our show, we like it when you leave comments, reviews. Obviously, on Apple, it's nice if you leave 5 stars. But again, we'll take any stars that you'll give us, any type of feedback, because we love doing the show just because we're fans of Star Wars, and that's what we want to talk about. But at some point, we need to continue to pay for the fuel so we can keep the trunk afloat. Maybe make some renovations. We've talked about that. Maybe having a contest here pretty soon that I think Mr. Admiral Kyle is going to be running here pretty soon. So, be on the lookout for that, listeners. But yes, that would be great to leave us positive 5-star reviews if possible.
Because if you leave us 1-star reviews, we might be so burning with revenge that we wouldn't die from being stabbed with a lightsaber.
That's right.
Wait, that sounds pretty cool, actually.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on this extra special episode to deal with one of the best episodes of Star Wars television that has ever been made. And Derek, where can people find you out there on social media?
So you can find me on Twitter at HoodieDM83, or you can find me on Facebook at Derek Marsh under my real name. And obviously, as you mentioned, the Star Wars What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast Facebook group I run. Find us on there and hit us up with anything that you want to talk about. We do a lot of fun stuff and post news articles and pictures as we do a lot of Star Wars.
Awesome. Nathan, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook under my real name, Nathan Miracle, or you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Gooey Chewy. That's GOOEYCHEWIE. And Darth Smooth over there. Where can people find you?
They don't find me, I find them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That tracks.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at The Way of the Way. You can look me up by my name, Lee Fillingsness, on Facebook. I talk too much, get into the politics, all that sort of stuff. And you can check me out on IMDb. I work in a lot of independent films as a bad guy, fight choreographer, occasional linguist. That's about it. Yeah.
And of course, on Blood of Kings podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That I host with one Kevin M. Reitzel.
That's
and
right.
You know, I kind of got that job because I gave a 5-star review a long time ago. And they're like, hey, we should have this guy on. And then they're like, hey, want to do a whole lot of work instead of just listen? I'm like, okay, fine. That's not work.
I have to do work now. Okay.
Good times, good times. And if folks want to find me between shows, you can find me on Facebook under my real name, Scott Botman, or you can find me over on Twitter at ScotticusMax. And I do write my own science fiction novels, and so you can check out my author website at writegreatscott.com. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, everybody. We want to say that we couldn't do this show without you, so please give us the feedback between shows about what you might want to see differently or what you really enjoy. And please always remember to respect each other, and always remember to respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it. Ugh.